He's got a view of the area. He can see where Crook's troops are. He can see where Belle Grove is. He can see where Emory's 19th Corps is. He can see where the cavalry is encamped. They've just returned to go into camp. So he sees the whole area. Evidently, the people will be the ranking man in charge will not pay much attention to increasing security. And they come down off the mountain and they're going to meet with General Early. Early realizes he's got to either attack or it is going to be generated by what Gordon explains and Hotchkiss sketches out for them. We're going to send one column, General Wharton's column, with 34 cannons will assemble in Strasbourg. And his mission is to advance after the battle is commenced down the valley, down the valley pike, and strike the people who are Emory's men who are encamped in the area just south of Belle Grove. General Kershaw, with whom who is new to the area, traveling with General Early, will go the way we're going. Early will be riding along. The men will fix their canteens so they will not rattle. They will be going very quiet the best way they can. Now the other, Gordon will be given 3 divisions. His own division, the division commanded by Pegram and John Pegram, and the division commanded by General Ramseur. With these, he will break camp on Fisher's Hill, as you can see, at about 11 o'clock at night on the 18th. You'll have no artillery with him. His men will fade. It's getting cold. His men will ford the Shenandoah River, just where you see it, and they have laid out and found a trail that passes between the south side of the Shenandoah River and the slope of the Massanutten. And they're going to travel that trail. It's going to be very, very narrow, that trail. You're passing most of the Confederate troops. Now, as they pass along it, they come to a place where they have removed a forked stick. And for a moment, they take a trail going to the right rather than the left. And Gordon realizes he's made the mistake. Gordon is a big I am man, and he will then lead the men along the base of the Massanutten with the Shenandoah River on their left bank. The Union are oblivious of what is happening. They will come out on the floodplain of the Shenandoah River, and that we'll be looking down on that as we travel. And it is level today, and it's going to give him access to 2 fords across Cedar Creek. McInturf's is going to be where McInturf's is where Cedar Creek flows in to the Shenandoah, And down there below it is the lower Bowman's Ford, which leads by the big plantation there, and that will bring them out on a road that's going to lead up onto the escarpment. And Kershaw will come moving along the road. His mission, they do not know that Sheridan is absent. They believe Sheridan is still in Belle Grove. Actually, staying in Belle Grove that night is going to be General Crook. And Crook's men are camped, as you can see, as follows. Thorburns Brigade is going to be just above Bowman's Ford on the crest of on a sharp rise. His camp is fortified. He has with him 12 cannons. Then you can see where the other division of Crook's command is commanded by, at this time, by the future President of the United States. He has not fortified his camp. He has with him 6 guns, whereas Thornburg has with him 10 guns. Then that takes care of Crook's camp. Emory's camps, you can see those things that look like teepees. Emory is on the field south of Belle Grove, overlooking Cedar Creek, with his left flank resting on the pike. Now the 6th Corps, which is returned from their sachet up to Ashby's Gap, are on Red Hill. They're on the north side of Meadowbrook, and there where you can see where his 3 divisions are camped, Wright's 3 divisions. Now the Merritt's people are camped to the west of there. So the men are moving out now. Gordon has the longest way to go, and he will move out. There's Treetop Peak. That's where they looked down in the Union camps on the morning of the 18th and saw they were oblivious to the Confederates being anywhere near the area. The railroad was on the same alignment as now. Now we're going to be traveling with General Kershaw. Traveling with him is General Early. Early is riding because once Kershaw has crossed Cedar Creek, is located Bowman's Ford, pointed out to him by Early. Early will return to join General Wharton. Wharton's men are concentrated on the high ground that we just left, constituting the town of Rossborough. On your map, they're moving across the base of that peninsula to get into position. When you would first see them coming into view would be on the other side of that those silos. Yeah, they are going to be down here, moving across here about 4 a.m. on the morning of the 19th. Sheridan is soundly sleeping up in Winchester, roughly 14 miles away.
What's up?
Feet tall. That's how surprised they're going to be. And almost all the Union troops in Thorburns Division, except Wiles' 2 regiments, are still sound asleep. The cooks will be up eating coffee, but the camp is definitely not alert. the gunners are not at their 10 guns, and the Confederates are soon going to have those 10 cannon in Thorburns camp. General Early. Early says, this is where you're to cross the river, and you'll cross the river when you can hear firing from downstream that way. And when you hear that, you're going to deploy, cross here, and see if you can charge up those slopes and catch the Union dozers. We'll go back to it. There is no security. The only people up at Thorburn camp at between 4 and 5 are the cooks who are fixing the fires for breakfast. No sentries. And you're going to be able, and so Early has gone to crossroads. You're going to join the column that is to advance via the Sally Pike. And he will be the last to advance. When they hear it'll be almost 6 o'clock before Wharton will advance with the artillery. Now, what's going to happen, and we're going to see the fords where Gordon is crossing. Downstream from here, roughly a mile, you come to where Cedar Creek joins the Shenandoah River. That's McIntosh's ford. That's where you are going to cross if you're in the division commanded by General Peagler. Then the other two brigade divisions commanded by Gordon, and all right, you got a bridge man coming up, covering by Gordon and Ramsor will cross at the lower ford.
The other way.
Watch it,
At
Ed.
the lower ford, they will cross. Now, when we hear some firing from down at McIntosh's ford, the orders will go out. And if we're in Kershaw's division, 3,200 men, we're going to cross this bridge here, just like our buses are going to do. We're going to go up the route here, and as we go up, we're going to come to a place where I'm going to have a bus, one of our tour manager is going to deploy a man with a stop sign. And then we're going to turn right. When we turn right, we're going to be following that road that is along the base of those bluffs, because we have left Kershaw behind. And by this time, as they say, shots fired up there. Now remember, earthworks there are very similar, but not as impressive as you saw at Star Fort. When they come out of the ditch and over the works, the Yankees who are half awake are going to say those Confederates seem like they're 7 feet tall. They've scored total surprise on Thorburns division. They will capture the 10 guns with it. They will put the only person that's going to get out of there with any organization will be a brigade commander called by Colonel Williams. And he will get out with 2 regiments that are somewhat organized. The rest are going to be running as fast as they can, pursued by the Confederates. And the Confederates catching them bayoneting them, killing them, and you have routed Thorburn Brigade. Thorburn will be killed. He will never fight in another battle. He's an unsung hero here. And his brigade, his division is routed except for 2 regiments. All the artillery captured, and it's a resounding success. The Crook is back at Bell Grove. He is oblivious what has happened. Hayes, who is halfway between us and Bell Grove, is oblivious as what has happened. At this moment, Emory, in his position, is oblivious of what has happened to Thorburns division. And Bright is oblivious over on Red Hill. It's torn full and complete surprise. So things are starting off very well for the Confederates. Now for the lecherous ones who were here a number of years ago, that island was much more sandy there. And when you arrived there were about somewhere between 50 and a score of high school girls. Figuring probably juniors or seniors. They're sunbathed. The women sunbathed, they removed their upper. And they're laying there with nothing covering the upper. Except they have to hug the ground to keep these lechers from the Chicago Roundtable from seeing how well they're
Truck coming. Truck coming.
and I cannot get them moving for at least 20 minutes. I can't get them moving for at least 20 minutes. So it's not suitable for sunbathing anymore. I will bring my so the ground is falling away to our right, and you're going to see the body of water is suddenly going to get larger on our left as Cedar Creek marries its waters with the North Fork of the Shenandoah. Evans's men will continue along the route our bus is moving. So Evans's Georgians will be traveling along the route our bus is going. He had been badly wounded at the Battle of Monocacy back on the 9th day of July. See, there is the North Fork of the Shenandoah. To our right is the Cedar Creek. They've now married their waters. Now we're soon going to come out on Long Meadow Plantation. It's historic. So here, more than 170 years ago. The buildings are historic, and there is the other Bowman Ford there, where the other 2 brigades, Penders and the other two divisions, the ones commanded by Pegram and the division commanded by Ramseur are going to cross. That gives Gordon now has 8,000 men all assembled, and we're going to be following him as he moves against first Hayes. Hayes' command. Remember, Hayes commands the other division in Crook's command. Crook's command is shrinking. Crook at the time now they heading for Belgrove is Payne's cavalry. They believe Sheridan is sleeping there, but they don't know that Sheridan isn't back with the army. Sheridan has spent the night in Winchester. excuse me, we're gonna turn sharp left. Because I don't know why, I guess so. Back here in the back country, I get right and left. There's a kitty cat, in case anybody wants a cat. Now the roads are gonna be improving as we go along. Now we're going up. We're now about a mile south of where Thorburns division was overrun, rushed, except for Wiles's two regiments with him. You're going to fall back and be some assistance to Thomas's Vermonters. We will not turn into the first road to the left, because that would take us down to Thorburns camp. Now is located. We're soon going to have our second busing stop, and we will do a walk here. That's important for our good tour director, because he has to figure that into. We've had our one debusing stop, and we would like two more debusing stops, which he has to divide. This one we're coming up to should be the last debusing stop. Will be the shortest one when we're off the bus. The earthworks at that time.
That was 69, right?
Yes.
1969. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that when you created that nomination, it was the largest acreage.
It's the largest National Historic Landmark of a historical site in the United States.
And the front park boundary, if you look at our map, which Jonathan, our brochure, which Jonathan put in your thank you, your kit. You look at the park map, it's got
This division, his two brigades, are very badly beaten up. One of its division commanders is dead. Fortunately, the other isn't dead, as we wouldn't have had President Hayes to kick around. But they've broken Hayes. Now, Wiles will save two regiments of Thornburg's brigade when they're overrun. And he's going to be very important, because he's going to be with Thomas in this this crucial time. This man's going to be very responsible for where the Vermont Monument is and where it was then. And so that will be our last stop. So we're going, there's a trail here and a number of markers, and it's going to talk about the attack on Emory's division. Emory's division is not going to hold. There are too damn many Confederates. Again, going back to what our friend here, the major, the Confederates are badly outnumbered. But remember that Gordon has three divisions with him, over 8,000 men. And they now have committed Kershaw's division here. They've committed Wharton's division here. So you're going to have early right now, or Gordon, what we want to say, now is using overwhelming numbers of both infantry and artillery against Emory. And Emory is not going to hold his position. And that means that even Wright, tomorrow. We'll end up with Thomas this afternoon and talk about the Vermont Monument, and how important it is. But we're going to walk the line of Emory's position because the earthworks are still here and they're marked pretty well. And I think you used to have a lot. You inherited some Gettysburg volunteers to come down here. Why? Because Gettysburg, a number of years ago, seemed to be not that interested in groups coming in from Ohio to do a work day there. So they started coming down here to Cedar Creek, and so there's a connection with the Ohio, and of course you have the Ohio Mafia would be interested here, because there are lots of Ohioans here, and so the mayor's been here with me in 2019 and year 1994. I did not know that, so I'm just learning it today. Why this monument sits back here. Thank you.
You're welcome. We actually restored the Ramsar monument, completely cleaned it, restored it, replaced the wrong type of cannonballs at the top. You'll see that later in 2014 for the 150th anniversary. And the first step we had to do was ask VDOT's permission because they own that monument too, same deal. And they said, we don't own the monument. And we said, yes, you do. And we proved it. And they said, well, go ahead. So we did. But that's the kind of cooperation and agreements we have to iron out to make these things happen. Before we start heading up the trail, Jonathan, this is a good place to do your group photograph. So why don't you all gather over here by the monument facing this way? We'll get our group. Some of you, if you want to, can gather over here to get a better view of what I'm going to point out. So you can kind of expand off to that direction if you like. I know it's a little crowded. We do tours of the trench line in the summer when I have a larger staff, maybe once a month or maybe one. Entrenchment line right here. Normally, I should explain, in the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of growth in the grass. This is normally a much easier. She ran almost all the way to the valley pipe, but the land just over here beyond that fence is private property. So those remaining entrenchments were probably destroyed. But what you're looking at is there's a group that formed together in the 1980s or 1990s. David Lowe formed it. It's a Civil War fortification group, and they came up with this classification system. Class 1 would be fixed artillery positions like Star Fort, or the ones around the bigger major cities like Richmond and Washington. Class 2 is fixed infantry positions. Again, the big entrenchments with parapets and ditches that connected those forts and so on. This is a class 4. It's called a rapid infantry entrenchment. But to be honest with you, it's still pretty substantial. You're looking right here at the remaining parapet. They would throw down logs, normally from fence rails they would gather, 2 parallel lines, and start filling that with dirt from the ditch they dug out on the other side. That depression is where the troops would be located. The ditch is normally 2 feet deep. The parapet's about 3 feet high. It's sloped in this direction towards the enemy, so altogether, between the parapet and the ditch, 5 feet. So all the soldier has to do is crouch down a little bit, and he's completely covered, except for his head. And in some cases, if you have time, you'd put a head log on top to even protect that. And then, of course, you throw abattis out to the front, those tree branches with all the leaves stripped off and the limbs sharpened and then intertwined. So it's like, again, a runner of barbed wire. They were all facing this way. Gordon saw that, towards Cedar Creek. So he had to come up with a plan to try to get around it, and that's why he developed the plan he did that we've described, which allowed them to attack the far left end of the Union line, crush the 8th Corps, and when they attack this area, the entrenchments are faced the wrong way. They're faced this way, not this way. When the Confederate line comes in, it comes in not only in on their left, but their left rear. And so these entrenchments instantly become really useless. When the initial Confederate attack struck the line along the road over there, as I described it earlier, there was some heavy fighting, but it doesn't last very long before they're crushed, and very quickly they're in the entrenchments here. They did use some of the entrenchments early in the fighting, and there was actually accounts of hand-to-hand fighting across the entrenchments for some battle flags. But essentially, they're outflanked, and to save themselves very rapidly, Emory realizes, and the rest of his officers realize, they got to retreat. The quickest way to retreat and get out of here is to go up the entrenchment line. So we're going to basically follow their retreat. It is a fighting withdrawal. They're not going to be crushed, the 19th Corps, like the 8th Corps was, but still, at the point of the attack, they're outnumbered, and they're going to have to retreat. And that's what we're going to do, kind of follow the entrenchment line. Anything to add?
No, nothing to add, except this is rather unique on how the recession comes along and saves the earthworks.
Yeah, without that recession in the 1990s, this probably would have been a housing development. Now, Ed, you.
He won't ask for help. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I practically had to stay on his.
when he says, "Well, we're going to have this wonderful tour," nobody hears him. He's so quiet.
Down?
Oh, somebody did, but I don't think it was him. Yes, it was Ed.
Belgrove Manor straight ahead.
Shit, I got to cross that one bucket. I'm going to live long enough to beat Ed to a place on a trip. That'll feel good.
He was so far in front of us.
He's usually halfway through his goddamn speech before I get up here.
Now,
Right there.
when they drive Emory out of here, they will then start toward the, Emory is going to be driven out of here, and he's going to be driven back by Bell Grove, in, where is that little stream here? That stream right there is right behind Bell Grove. As his position gives away, Emory will have to fall back into that area there.
That's Bell Grove, right?
Yeah, Bell Grove. And there is Meadow Branch. It's a tributary of the Cedar Creek. It goes off in this way, and it's fairly deep. We'll see it tomorrow. It's fairly deep when you drop off from Bell Grove down into Meadow Branch. In here would be a mill. This is particularly important when in the Union counterattack, because Custer will sweep down through here on the Union counterattack. This, of course, when the Union is still losing. And you can see up there we're going to be talking, there, of course, is the Valley Pike, where we see the heavy traffic. There is Middletown along that ridge line. This road here is the principal access to Bell Grove. See the power line pole? That is a road, and you ride out that road, and you come to the Ramsor Monument, where you hit the highway. You're going to find the Ramsor Monument. Now, on the ridge line, just beyond that, is where Thomas is going to make his stand. With about 1,200 men, he's going to delay the Confederates considerable time up there on that that ridge line. It becomes very important in preservation because Senator Jeffords ain't supposed to be interested, according to Senate protocol, in sites in Virginia. That's supposed to be at the time of the two Senator Warners in Virginia. And he will introduce the legislation as Eric knows, he and Bumpers will introduce the legislation in the Senate that will create this foundation that Eric works for. And Senator Warner is very coronated off, because what's going to happen, he's going to give a breakfast for selected senators. He invites Senator Warner, who has very little interest in this project. He has probably more interested, he's much more interested in his former wife. They're no longer married, of course. And he doesn't come,
Make it more exciting.
and Bumpers invites Jim, a person who is 2 years before had won the Pulitzer Prize for history for Battle Cry of Freedom, and he gives a speech to tell them how important Civil War sites are. And Warner has some flunky from his office trying to debate with a man with their credentials as a person, and Warner is very curated his staff because they so poorly prepared him for this breakfast. And out of that will come the solution to to Stewart's Hill property. It'll come to the establishment of the foundation in the Senate to protect these battlefields we're talking to now. And Jeffords is very interested in it. And of course, they're violating senatorial courtesy because bumpers and the senator from Arkansas, who's a very good friend of mine, pushed this through, and our friend Warner is pissed off as hell.
Does he vote against it?
Huh?
Does he vote
Bumpers,
against it?
that'd be Senator Bumpers, because Senator Bumpers is the chairman of the public Parks and Public Lands Committee in the Senate.
No,
The
he
Senate,
was saying, did Warner vote against the final bill
he will.
or
He
abstain?
will. He will not. He does not. He argues against it and will try to amend it to death. But he is not. I don't think he votes against the final. He votes for the final bill, which favors the developers. Where's Mary April working on a park cleanup program today? At Antietam. Why isn't she down here?
Why isn't she? So we built the trail on April 2nd, and the reason we haven't opened it yet is because this trail, the new one, will cross the earthworks at 3 locations. We can't have people trudging actually on the earthworks, so we have to build these 3 small footbridges. And we're working our way through the compliance issues, the government regulations. We have a volunteer group, the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, that's going to build them. And hopefully by this summer, that trail will be open, which will double the length of the existing
So
trail.
you put the Boy Scouts put in much labor down here.
15 of the 38 people that showed up that day were Boy Scouts. Realizing by this point, 6:30, nearing on 7 o'clock, it's not a matter of if the Confederates reach Belle Grove, but when. And so what they have to do is evacuate Belle Grove. Imagine surrounding that home were hundreds of tents and wagons. It's, again, the nerve center of the Union Army, so they're scrambling to get all that stuff out of the way before the Confederates eventually capture it, which they do around 7 o'clock.
And then if you look at your map, you can see that Wright's men who are camped on Red Hill are now moving up. They've given Wright time to bring his men up from Red Hill.
Look up.
Wright has been shot in the face. He's not a pretty figure today because his blood is caked in his beard. It's not a disabling wound or a life-threatening wound, but he doesn't look very good frothing blood out of the face.
Just look straight up this tree line and to the right of it, and what you'll see out there in those open fields are 2 smaller faded red barns, smaller buildings. Right above that, you'll see a brownish, light tan field. That's the beginning of Red Hill, which is off in that direction. Then if you keep going to the left, you'll see kind of a tower structure. Unfortunately, that's the bad news here at Cedar Creek. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. Limestone has been the driving force in the development of the Shenandoah Valley as a major agricultural force through the pre-Civil War era, and now limestone is this area contains one of the richest, highest quality limestone seams in the country, and now it's industrial mining, strip mining. It's like a miniature Grand Canyon, and they are going to double the size of the existing limestone mine. It's actually owned by a Belgian company who could care less about American history. The Frederick County Board of Commissioners saw the dollar signs in 2008 when they agreed to rezone this land to commercial, industrial, and now it's going to allow them to expand their mining operation over the next 30 years over 600 acres, 450 of which is core battlefield land.
One section, was a important location during the Civil War. In fact, General Sigel used it as his headquarters when he marched up the valley on his final active campaign.
And speaking about Belle Grove.
And he returned to his headquarters at Belle Grove after he retreated. He's there on that humiliating day on May 27, 6th, when General David Hunter arrives to relieve General Siegel as commander of the Department of the Shenandoah. And that will be the beginning of a rapid exit from the United States Army. Hunter is very confident when he arrives there, and he moves up the valley, and he starts off like he's the second coming. And of course, we do not visit the Battle of Piedmont because it's too far up the valley. On the 5th day of June, 1864, he crushes the force that Breckinridge has left in the valley under Rumble Jones. Jones will lose his life. The things will then begin to turn sour for General Hunter, and he will meet General Crook there at Stanton, where he will go on the evening of the Battle of Piedmont, and then they will move on Lexington, and they will win. They will occupy Lexington, get revenge on VMI on the 11th day of June when they capture Lexington and burn all the buildings at VMI except one. As I say, Hunter tends to be a pyromaniac, and he'll also burn the home of former Governor Letcher, who was left with the capital. Hunter will never, Hunter will not again, as an active soldier in the Civil War, see Belle Grove. Now, Sheridan, of course, since it's a fancy house, Sheridan, when he falls back from Tom's Brook, and before he leaves for Washington on the 16th day of October, his headquarters are in Belle Grove. He will tarry in Washington until the morning of the 18th, when he returns, and he spends the night. Instead of going back to Belle Grove, he'd have been probably better off if he'd been on the field on the morning of the 19th. He spends the night of the 18th and 19th in Winchester. General Crook is using it as his headquarters, although Crook is not the senior officer. On that fatal morning of the 19th day of October, General Wright is in command, and he's over on Red Hill, about a mile from Belle Grove, where his headquarters are. You'll see Belle Grove very slightly earlier in the morning, about 6 o'clock, when he's already been wounded. Not a very dangerous wound, but it's one that a man does not like to receive. No, it's not in his gonads, it's in the face. And it bleeds quite a bit, and he evidently doesn't have alcohol or something to wash his face up, because his beard is caked with blood when he arrives from north of Meadowbrook to take command of the fighting that takes place around Belle Grove around 7 a.m. on the morning of the 19th. Now, Belle Grove is first enters into my career as Eric told you yesterday. The trust is big in preserving architectural masterpieces. So they prevailed on the local congressman to call on the Park Service to designate Belle Grove as a National Historic Landmark, but in only architecture. And they made a big mistake because I was the one sent down to evaluate the property and draft the nomination. Now, they made a mistake because they did not realize I'm not very much interested in colonial architecture. And I come down there and I realize it's very important to the matter of Cedar Creek. So I proceeded to include it not as a reason a landmark is being designated. It's being designated as a National Historic Landmark because of the Battle of Cedar Creek. And was Eric said at that time, had the largest boundaries of any National Historic Landmark. And Cedar Grove ended up being a contributing factor to it. So I was not the most, for many years, I was not the most popular person on the grounds of Belle Grove. The people from that generation have been unfortunate. They have outlived me, and they don't follow their history very well. They could have the same documentation that the park has, the hearing does of the National Historic Park. So all the players in it that were interested in architecture, unfortunately, they don't have the longevity I do. 4:30 on the afternoon of the 19th. Then they'll have its most important guest, because that's where they will bring General Ramseur to, who has been very badly wounded. Will stand where he was wounded, up about a mile and a half north of Belle Grove. But his ambulance carrying him, as we said yesterday, is one part of that terrific traffic jam at Spangler's Mill, right across that small creek. And two wagons tried to cross at the same time and locked the wheels. And he is taken to Belle Grove, and they've had various rooms in which he dies in. I tend to believe he's probably in the room in which the Taylor sketchbook shows him. And he is visited by Custer, particularly of the Union Army, and a number of men who will comfort him in a few hours that he will be conscious before he crosses the divide. Now, Ramseur got married relatively, since he's a young man. He got married shortly after West Point, and he knows that he has got his wife pregnant, and she is due for birth in late October. He will know that his wife has given birth, but he doesn't know what the sex of the child is. The child, he never will know what sex she is a female. And she will be there along with her mother when they dedicate that monument to General Ramseur. It's dedicated around 1910 or something like that. And we'll probably visit it when we're doing more highlights, since that's the battle incident. That's where Thomas's brigade will be making its stand in the area there. We'll probably see there. That's going to be one of our stops after we leave Belle Grove. Belle Grove is an interesting house. Now, Larry Gibbs did not go in it. He has less use for historical architecture, and you would never go into any. But I'm not that short-sighted. So we will be there, and they'll probably give us a talk out on the porch.
Sheep to the valley. He's a very clever man. He was Phi Beta Kappa from his first year at William and Mary, and he was secretary of the chapter his second year. And those were the only 2 years. He wasn't a dropout, though, because William and Mary closed down during the Revolution. He went off. He was a lieutenant on General Peter Muhlenberg's staff. That was one of the Virginia divisions. And he was at Yorktown. In fact, he inventoried, we got the record, the captured property that we got from the British when they surrendered. So he was a militia major when he came back, and everyone called him Major. I mean, it's like a Kentucky judge with a title for life. He started out with 483 acres he got from his father. His grandfather was one of the first people who settled the valley. His grandfather got 100,000 acres from the governor of Virginia, but it wasn't a personal grant. It was a franchise deal. He was supposed to bring in 100 settlers into the valley. This was a very calculated policy the Virginia government had to fill the valley with Europeans to protect the Tidewater aristocrats, can we say, the first families of Virginia, from the dirty, rotten French and Indians. And that was a real threat. I mean, so most of the people that populated the valley weren't like the WASPs, let's say, the Anglicans, Episcopalians. They were all, and you had to be a member of the church down in the Tidewater. You had all kinds of people: Quakers, Dunkers, Church of the Brethren, Baptists, Methodists, and they didn't think the way they did the rest of Virginia. In fact, originally the valley wasn't secessionist, but after Lincoln asked for 75,000 volunteers, all of Virginia changed their mind. So, part of the book I wrote, I discovered that there were 102 Heights in the valley who enlisted and fought in the Civil War. To a man, 102 of them fought for the South. There were 4 who lived in West Virginia who wore blue. But you got to understand, there was slavery. This plantation was built on the backs of slaves because Isaac Height's first wife was Nellie Madison, James Madison, our 4th president's sister. And when they got married, her father, Colonel Madison, James Madison Sr., gave him 15 slaves. So he grew that 483 acres to 75,000, and at the high point they had 105 slaves here. And then there was a depression in 1850, and they started selling slaves south, down the river, up the river actually, here. Where was I going? Oh, well, it was talking about the Civil War. Major Height had 15 grandsons and sons. Actually, he had a total of 40 grandsons, but 15 fought. Some died in infancy, some were too old. I mean, he had a hell of a range of kids. So 4 grandsons and 2 great-grandsons were killed during those 5 years. And another 9 fought and survived. One of his great-grandsons lost his arm at Fisher's Hill, just to the south where you guys were yesterday.
Where were the slave quarters?
Well, that's a very good question. We don't really know. We just have 2 hints. One is a map by I'm going to blank. I have a lot of senior moments now. By Jedediah Hotchkiss, Stonewall Jackson's topographer. He drew a map, and they were out in someplace in that cow field. Where exactly? We have archaeologists who started digging, but I haven't gone out to see where the heck they were. And the other hint we have is, I don't know if you all heard of James Taylor. He was, he published a hell of a, he didn't really publish it, but subsequently his art sketchbook was published, I think in the 1990s.
Yes,
It's
yes,
an
yes.
unbelievable treasure trove of images and notes. So he was kind of fixated on Bell Grove as you walk through. Maybe they'll have pictures up. You never know what's up and down around. Everything moves around, which
Was
is
this
good.
house burned?
No, it was not. For the major reason, I think, is this was used by 4 different Union commanders. In other words, every Union commander that we went through. Why? Well, you guys are all into the military things. Headquarters are always behind the lines, right? And the front lines are always at a defensible geographical feature, i.e. Cedar Creek. It didn't work for the South because there's no natural defensible terrain to the north. So, whereas there was a whole series, Frank Siegel, what am I forgetting? I don't think Hunter knew this, but this was Sheridan's headquarters. It was also Crook's headquarters. They shared it. So no, it wasn't burned. We have 2 little bullet holes up there, but I'm sure there was one hell of a lot more, because at one point, I'm not sure precisely, but I'd say maybe where that little yellow cow thing is, I think it might be a water feeder, I don't know, I haven't been out there. Someplace out there, there was a Union brigade desperately trying to stop an entire rebel division, because the Union trains, all their beams and bullets were parked on this lawn around here, and they were successful in getting them out of here. But the major point is, those weapons weren't very accurate, so you got a horde of a division worth of people shooting in this direction. There is one. We'll go up on the porch now. Anyway, I fell 3-top mountain. Look straight in the middle there. There's a little notch. If you look real hard, you can see there's a microwave tower. To the right of it is Signal Knob. That's where John C. Gordon went up to look in Jedediah Hotchkiss to spy on, overlook, scout out the Union dispositions. And he said it was just like being, he didn't say, it was just like being a helicopter, but he could tell which branch each of the Union soldiers were. He could see the colors on their.
How long would it take for someone from here to get up there, and would they just get going?
Well, they climbed up, and it took them most of the day. It's a heck of a climb. A little beyond me because I have COPD now. I'm not getting there.
You're saying about James Taylor,
Yeah.
his drawings and connection with slaves, is that
Oh,